Got it. Got it.
So we are now streaming live on Facebook in the Global Resources for Men. Today, we have the fantastic honor and pleasure of getting to talk to my new friend, Shophar Graves, who is located in California. Shophar is going to be talking to us about some slightly different things than normal, which is nice because he has written a book called Sacred Orgasmic Living, which he has.
Oh, yes.
Right here. And he also practices traditional Chinese medicine. He does breath work and Qi Gong, and he partners with his amazing, lovely lady, Kirsi, and they do different workshops helping couples and also men and women separately. Isn't that correct, Shophar?
Yes, you got it.
And then we have S.E.X, S in the period, E in the period X, and the sensual energetic exchange, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about masculinity and its energetic role in consciousness and nice guys versus players and whatever else we happen to get going on. So I accidentally made a funny face on here. We're gonna have to get rid of that. It wasn't supposed to be a bad face. It was supposed to be a happy face. Sorry, Facebook and all its silliness that when you hit buttons, these things happen. So anyhow, without rambling introduction, Shophar, thank you so much for joining us all the way from California.
It's a blessing, sis. No question. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. And for those watching, it's kind of funny. So Shophar is originally from Richmond, Virginia, which is only an hour away from where I currently live, which is just funny how the universe aligns sometimes, because I actually found out about Shophar from a friend of mine in Arizona. Go figure. So Shophar, what brought you into this work that you're doing with the sacred, like sexuality and sensuality and all that?
You know, I like to say that it's kind of like a remembrance of sort. I feel like I think at our core, all of us, we are sacred, sensual beings. So I like to say that the remembrance started in this lifetime in 2002, when I actually met a master, a Qi Gong master by the name of Yao Morris. And he was doing a book signing at a bookstore called One Force there in Richmond, Virginia. And long story short, his book just resonated with me to such an extent. It was the first time I had seen, he had a picture where the orgasm in a woman is starting from the breast. And I was like, I always knew that I liked to spend a lot of attention on the breast, but
Sure.
That was like a different concept. You know, a lot of our stuff here in Western society is genital based,
Right.
both for the man and the woman, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
that was the beginning.
Interesting. And so from there, like, what direction did you go to like research and find different masters and so on and so forth?
I say there was three masters, I guess, physically that I met that really impacted me. So he was the first one in 2002. And then I studied with him for 5 years. He introduced me to, or took me deeper into the understanding about the tree of life and, you know, how to tap into different personality types that are in all of us, the sacred sensuality, and then Qi Gong. And then in 2007, I guess because I was a good student, he introduced me to another master by the name of Nityama. And Nityama was the first one that I saw doing the energy work that kind of looks like Reiki. But the thing is like the person receiving the energy can go into an orgasmic state without even being touched.
Fascinating.
And it's like wave after wave after wave. And you're processing your emotions and your memories, your thoughts, you know. And so it's really deep work. And then in 2013, I met the third master named Sasha Cobra, and I got an experience of that energy work with her.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of people out there, myself included, that had never really heard of this concept of being able to orgasm without being touched. I mean, unless you're talking about like, there's this one hilarious movie with Zac Efron in it, and like Dave and somebody like get wedding dates or something like that. And there's this a hilarious thing where she basically like buys a massage for the woman, the bride to be, and he's like not touching her at all. And it's just like the energy. And she's like, how are you doing that? And she's like orgasming on the table basically. And it's just crazy. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything that was remotely of this concept. So it's really fascinating to get to bring that forward. So maybe sharing with people a little bit more of like where they can go. Obviously, it will give them the resources to find you to talk to you about more of that, but where they would go to even start looking up information about that sort of situation and how they can tap into it for themselves, right? Because I assume that that's something that a person could create within themselves energetically.
I love what you said there. I love the word, the term that you said, tap into, because literally it is a frequency. It's just like a channel that's playing, like right now in the airwaves, there's all these different channels, and 93.5 is playing, and so is 99.9. And it's turning our dial to that frequency. And then we're able to pick up that channel. And so orgasmicness is a frequency that we tune into.
Interesting. Versus just like the manual experience of orgasming.
Yeah, certain buttons on the body, right, have been programmed to remember that dial, if you will, to remember that channel. So the G spot or the clit or the head of the penis, I guess they are hardwired to that channel and for some of us. But the thing is like we are orgasmic beings by nature. So this really gets us to a place where we expand our awareness system, or what we currently call our nervous system. We expand our awareness system that any part of our being, whether it be our little toe or our eyebrow, can become an orgasmic button.
Interesting. So like when you're talking to men initially who have never heard of this concept and they're just like, dude, you're fucking nuts or whatever, right? Like, how do you, because I'm sure you've had that experience in talking to guys and them having that perspective. How is it that you bridge that for them?
Well, so going back to what you were saying about the Zac Efron movie, like the first time I saw it, when I remembered, I didn't know it at the time, was the movie Cocoon.
Oh my gosh, that movie's so old.
And remember the pool scene?
Yeah, like
and she
I
drops her skin, and then the energy go, and then they have this orgasmic. Like, I didn't realize that as a kid looking at it, but when you think back to it, that's what we're talking about.
Interesting. You're gonna have a bunch of people like going back and
yeah, and so
like, what was that?
yeah, I mean, I'm an older head, I'm 44, so I know these youngins, 34, 44, 24 and stuff, they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but it's an old movie that they have this concept in there with aliens and stuff. Is deep. But to go back to answer your question is like, so with men, I talk about like wet dreams. Think about that. No one is touching you, but you're orgasming and ejaculating.
Huh. Interesting.
How is that happening? Like, it's the same concept. It's like, or when, like, I love that, what is the Lonely Island from the S.N.L, the Saturday Night Live. They have a video called Jizz in Your Pants. And it's like, it's like the men get too excited too quick and they just, same concept.
Yeah, it's like when guys are like young, right? They're teenagers or whatever, they're in middle school and like a stiff breeze comes by and they're just like, ah.
Right. So same concept. And the thing is to learn the mastery of it, though. It's like we start to be able to, so whoever's in the masculine, I want to make this very clear for the listeners too. We're talking masculine, feminine energy. We're not talking about genitals. So this could be gender fluid. This can be all these other different beautiful expressions of being. If we're talking about in a heterosexual relationship, the person who's in the masculine energy holds a certain frequency. And then the other person that's in the feminine is in a state of allowing. And that is where we, if I as the man in the relationship, if it's a heterosexual relationship, if I have the frequency of orgasmic in me, it's just like on the physical plane. If I give a seed to a woman who's ovulating, she will make a child. So she will make something greater than the seed, right? Same thing. If I'm just carrying a little bit of the frequency of orgasm in me, if she's in the state of allowing, she will go into full out bliss.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like it's a cool concept. Do you talk about that in your book then?
I do, and I want to again more succinctly answer your question though. When we're dealing with hard-headed men, because the masculine energy by nature is like, you got to show me, you got to prove it to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's I'm like pushing on it a little bit.
yeah, and that's the mental function. That's the mental function, is to be discriminating and to not like take everything at what somebody just says. So one of the things that I show, yes, prove it to them. So what I do is I help people have an experience of it.
And does that ever get awkward for men who are heterosexual and you're like, hey, have an experience of this more etheric, orgasmic energy, but they're like, you're a dude, like, how are you going to facilitate that for me?
So far it hasn't been. And I think if it gets, awkward, we have to, do the self-work of like, what is the awkwardness there? Right. Really what I get people to do is do some different breath work where they can feel the Qi, or as the Yoruba people in Nigeria call it, Ashe, or the prana that the Hindus call it, or the Ra that the ancient Egyptians called it. Different cultures call it different names, but to be able to physically feel this in your own body.
So it's more about embodiment and attunement of energy.
Yes.
So they're becoming more self-aware.
Yes. So there's an acronym that I always love to give people something that they can walk away with and change their life. So if they never even talk to either one of us again, if you remember this acronym and you play with it, it's V.I.B.E.
V.I.B.E. Okay.
V.I.B.E. So the ancient Egyptians, right, or I like to call them the people of Kemet, because Egyptian is Greek. They weren't Greek. They were Africans. So these African people from what we call Egypt or Kem or Kemet, they said that everything vibrates. And of course, today in science, they let us know that atoms and subatomic particles are vibrating at such a fast rate that we can't see it.
Sure, yeah.
So
science.
V is for voice or vocal, for our voice. The I is for introspection, to be able to look inward, to take our awareness and look inward. The B is for breath. And the E is for embodiment or emotions or endocrine, as in the endocrine system.
Interesting. Yeah. So is there like a particular exercise that you take them through, like a series of scaffolded exercises, or?
I have some general ones. What I'd like to really do is, because it's a good practice for myself, and then it's good for the masculine to be dynamic. So it's good to have like Kirti, she likes to say, my lady, she says, to know the box, and then to be able to be out the box, you have to first know the box. So I have some general practices that I can just tell people, but then I like to tune into whoever I'm with. In other words, like similar to Osho, he said, I don't answer the question, I answer the questioner.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's interesting. And it makes me think too about the difference between sensuality and sexuality, like engaging with those two things, because I feel like nurturing falls more into the aspect of sensuality versus engaging sexually. It's like, sexual energy, I feel like nurtures you in a different way, but sensual nurturing, I feel like goes deeper. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I love the way you described it. And so one of my life works, like when I take my last respiration on this planet, hopefully I will be able to be part of changing it from lowercase sex, which is basically just genitals. That's our current understanding. Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's fun. It's fun, but it's like basic. Hella fun, but I mean, if done correctly, that is.
Right. But we're more expansive than that. So I like to use the same letters, but with a more expansive way of looking at it. Sensual being the S, the E being emotional, and then the X factor is our consciousness with our respiration or our breath. So sensual, emotional exchange. And to me, lowercase sex is just being stuck in the genitals. You know, when it becomes sensual is when it does the microcosmic orbit and becomes, and it goes up our spine, the Kundalini, the central energy goes up to our crown, and we understand our oneness, we understand peace, we understand wisdom, and we're able to connect with our hearts. In other words, we go up the rest of the tree of life.
Right.
Like the tree in the background that you have there.
So aptly poised. No, I love that. And it's interesting too, because so many people struggle having to do mental gymnastics to orgasm, both male and female, for a variety of reasons, from trauma, from not being connected to your body, from being destimulated, from watching like too much pornography or whatever. To like, there's just so many aspects of not being connected to self and to your partner, right? Like maybe the expectations, they feel like there are just too many layers of expectations. or stress from work or whatever. There's a lot of guidance that people need and helping to get away from the shame that some people feel when they're not able to connect with their partner.
Right, right. And I love what you said, the mental gymnastics, right?
Yeah,
And
mental gymnastics to come.
one thing that's very key when we see just recently, what's her name? Simone Biles or whatever, she had to drop out of the gym after winning all these golds and everything, but because of her mental health, so when we talk about doing mental gymnastics in the bedroom, a lot of times this has become, it's because we haven't done the proper stretching and the proper embodiment practices to even show up in the bedroom. Now we're trying to do gymnastics and stuff, and it's not going to connect. So what I'm saying is like doing yoga, asanas, or Qi Gong with breath work, Tai Chi, these different practices, and bringing ourselves with awareness from moment to moment and processing our emotions with the introspection, expressing ourselves. Like if we're angry, especially as men, this is important, setting up a container to be able to properly say that I'm angry right now, I'm sad right now, giving voice to our feelings. These are the ways that when we step into the bedroom later on, we don't have to do mental gymnastics because we processed the things already.
Right, or being able to communicate your needs, because sometimes you might want to have sex animalistically, and other times you want to make love. And how do you communicate that to your partner in a safe and healthy way that's transparent, right? Like letting go of ego, letting go of expectation, so you can be fully present with your partner in whatever way that looks like.
Exactly. And this is where the deep work, especially for the masculine, for the men, for us to do our own work on our feminine. And I know a lot of guys, we don't want to talk about, some of us, we're such a homophobic, fear of the feminine society, that the concept of men having feminine energy in them, but yet we all have different estrogen levels, all beings, and testosterone, right? And and Kirti pointed this out to me, and I love the analogy. We all have nipples. Even men who have no mammary glands, we ain't putting nothing there to suck on, right? Or maybe,
and it's really interesting because some men love it when their nipples are played with and they have lots of sensory aspects there, and other men have no sensory connection to their nipples. And that is what it is. It's just like women. Like some women are far more tender there than others.
Right. And doing the deep inner work emotionally, so that now when you're with your lady, she can fall gently into the feminine. And then I believe if we do that, whether it's primal or lovemaking or both, and it's like all of those things, those cues are picked up on naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just creating that safe space, I think, to communicate, because both men and women oftentimes just struggle with that communication piece and the boundaries aspect. And because they don't communicate necessarily well, then boundaries get overstepped, right? And then people have hurt feelings and they don't feel safe. It's like, well, neither one of you were communicating what you needed. It's not always just the woman who's having their boundaries overstepped. Like sometimes guys aren't in the mood either, and a woman's pushing on it a whole bunch. And like, how do you really stand in your truth and integrity for what you want and need in that moment?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I agree.
So much there. So this wraps into that aspect you were talking about masculinity and consciousness, and like nice guys versus players. I know there's a lot of guys I've spoken to over the years that really struggle with that nice guy aspect.
Yeah, it's a frequency, it's a personality type that we can get stuck in. I would say that it's one that maybe understands in some way that it wants to respect the feminine. Let's be very clear though. There's two different main themes of nice guy. One is nice guy game. It's like, if I open the door for you and give you some flowers, you're gonna give me some pussy, right? That's no different than the jackass, really. You're just doing nice guy game. It's not really authentic to who you are. So let's be clear. I'm not talking about nice guy game. I'm talking about men who are genuinely, they actually care about the feminine, have love for it and respect for it. But that of itself, that's one aspect of what is supposed to be a full tree.
Right.
That's just one branch. And that of itself might still get you in the friend zone. We still have to carry these other energies these other personality types and be able to, at will, bring them to the forefront as well.
So tell the guys more about these different branches and personalities and how they can transition from that branch, the nice guy that might feel like their strongest branch because they're always there, into one that has potentially like more confidence and being able to stand in integrity in that aspect as well, and not being cocky and condescending.
It's so many beautiful ways to do it. So again, going back to that, to the vibe, voice, introspection, breath, and embodiment. Let's say maybe in certain, you will start to tap into these energies sometimes by just expressing your truth. You know, that you sometimes as a nice guy, you know that you want to have sex with this woman who's sitting on your couch right now, but you're playing around with it instead of just saying like, hey, I really, you know, I'm glad you're over here, and, you know, and speaking your truth in that moment, you know? So that's one thing, is starting to just express yourself, or telling your boss, you know what, I don't want to work overtime. That's a frequency, that's an energy that if you start to have some balls, you know, and carry yourself as such, it's going to move you out of the friend zone. So yeah, and that's just the V. If you go through introspection, breath, and embodiment, each one of them have different things that you can do. Again, embodiment is like, if we go to the E, the embodiment, it might be doing a martial arts class, or you know, dancing and just getting out of your head and just fucking dancing.
Expressing yourself.
How it moves energy.
Right. Yeah, because definitely dancing, it's another way of connecting as well, because there's that natural aspect of lead and follow.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, like, how many guys out there, when they dance, you love it when your woman back leads you.
Right.
I have yet to run across a man as a dancer for the last 20 years who enjoys being backled by his follow.
Right.
It's not.
No.
Yeah, and like a woman like wants to be like feel safe and comfortable to have a man who's confident in leading, right? That you feel safe and you know where to go.
Yeah.
Dancing.
And I think a powerful thing there is to have done our work again emotionally as a man, to be able to lead when, and then also be able to twirl your lady into the limelight and let her take the limelight, and it not be like an insecurity. A lot of women are playing themselves small with their sensuality and who they are and their emotionality, because they can tell that we have not done our own inner work to even go to these different spaces in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was a long time ago, I was dancing salsa all the time, and there was this powerhouse couple that would show up, and the woman was this phenomenal dancer, super sexy, super sensual, and her boyfriend was Latino, so like lots of natural machismo in that culture. And sometimes he would sit back and she would dance with these other men, and she'd be all sexy and sensual, and he would just be there. And some guy, another Latino, came up to him and he's like, why do you let her dance with other men like that? And he was basically just like, well, they're getting her all hot and bothered, but I get to take her home.
Right.
Because he didn't worry that she was going to be unfaithful. And he's like, yeah, like you can have a good time. You can have those sensual experiences. Like you can be big and bold and beautiful and express yourself. And I don't have to worry that there's a line that's going to be crossed. And I'm like secure in myself and know that I am good enough that I don't have to worry about that.
Exactly. And this is where we do the introspection, right? To see if we do have insecurities around that or whatever. Like, are we in a space that we can let our lady dance with all these other handsome and attractive men and everything, and let her, how funny is that language anyway? What the fuck are we talking about? Let her, like she's a dog, or, you know, like child. Like, no,
yeah, you know, it's just, yeah, there's so much drama that can come up, just so much insecurity that certain people have. And it's like, yeah, what of it if she gets turned on? Like, she's not going to do anything within like the agreement that we have of how we run our relationship, right? Like, where do you feel comfortable in being in integrity? That's the thing. Everybody's relationship looks different. And like, why should we judge somebody else for where their relationship is if their integrity for what their agreement is?
I agree. And see, these are the things of, I feel like doing the work. Before we came on here, the pre-show, we were talking about the power of language.
Yeah.
and decoding, and even like the term letting her do something, just the idea of that, and then also, or saying that someone is my husband or my girlfriend, these possessive pronouns.
Right.
To go more into sacred orgasmic living, to go deeper into that frequency, we got to start to let possession and obsession go.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And like that letting go of that possession and obsession, but also still being able to work within the bounds of integrity and agreement for what your relationship looks like.
Exactly.
And so how would you articulate that for them?
So, I mean, we can have those agreements. I feel like it's like you have the agreements that you're speaking to, like say, if we're being monogamous, we have those agreements. But even in that, that does not mean I own you or your genitals and your flirtatious energy or your ability to just be able to tap into your sensuality at will.
Right.
There's a fine line with having different boundaries around a relationship to protect it, or it becoming a cage.
Right, for sure. And I think that always really boils down to communication, right?
Right.
Being able to own the different spaces. And what guidance would you give the men in regards to like when trauma kicks in, either for them or for their partner?
When trauma kicks in?
Yeah.
Okay. It's so many different tools and things. It's really case by case, but in general, it would go back again to the embodiment, the breath, the introspection, and the vocal. It's picking those different tools and which is appropriate in any given moment. And what you use today, you might not use tomorrow, you know? So that's another thing, especially with the masculine energy. Sometimes we're looking for steps, boom, 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 25 steps to make her orgasm like never before, 11 steps to make her squirt, like these different things, right?
Right.
What life is really asking of us, though, I feel, is for us to get those things, again, know the box. So you can know those 25 and 11 steps or whatever, but then also be dynamic enough to not use any of them on any given moment too, and do something you've never done before. So in other words, what I'm saying with trauma is we can learn different techniques and stuff that can be very helpful. And then also be willing to go different places, which is uncertainty.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in uncertainty.
Yeah, there is a lot of power in uncertainty. Speaking of which, you and Kirti recently did a workshop on good pussy and sexual icons, if I remember correctly. Do you want to share a little bit about that for the guys?
Sure. I'd love to. So two concepts there, like the sexual icon. For a long time, we've only had one body type, and at least in Western, American culture, is kind of the Victoria's Secret, blonde hair, blue-eyed, or definitely the white woman frame or whatever, which is definitely one expression of beauty.
Sure.
But hue beings come in all different types of hues and shapes and sizes.
For sure.
So just to just have this one icon as the limited, frequency of what we see as attractive, it can be a little problematic.
Yeah.
So and then with the advent of hip hop, we got another body type, right? It's the small waist, big booty.
Yeah.
And that's nice too. That's another expression of beauty, but that's only two expressions now. What if you're, for instance, a black woman with no boot, with a slim frame? That can be like, you see all these different things, or if you're a white woman with a big butt, it's like all these different things that we put ourselves in boxes. So breaking down, again, doing the introspection about the sexual icon.
Right.
And then good pussy. A lot of men need to do the inner work about, like, what is good pussy? Do we say that term or whatever, but have we done the work to even know what that means and what that is to us?
So what would be how would you define good pussy to the guys out there that are just hearing this term, like in this context for the first time?
So I won't define it. I have my definition, and I'm not going to share it because I don't want to overstep my masculine boundary in their mental realm, right?
That's totally fine. It's just an interesting conversation. I can absolutely have that.
But to go to that though, I will do this. I will ask them to do the questioning themselves about what are some of the things like that you really enjoy. Like, think about being with different women or your wife or what your girlfriend, like, what are the traits that you find in common with your best sexual experiences? And then I think that's where you start to see that there are certain things, like maybe the way that she yields to, or, you know, it's beyond just, you know, physical trait. Maybe there are some things like wetness and things like that, but start to look at the different traits and you'll start to see and define. That's what's most important anyway. Who cares what I think?
No, I love the questioning. The questioning
Yes.
was more what I was looking for in regards to guiding them to that conversation within themselves for like, how do I define that? So what you just laid out is perfect for what
Yes.
I was actually looking for.
I say.
So what are some different things that you feel like you've seen in the work that you've done in your podcast, in the workshops you've done with men, the things that men in California are really struggling with?
I think in general, especially with these times, is societal pressure and unlocking patriarchy. You know, the term toxic masculine, unfortunately, is kind of just thrown out there haphazardly to be kind of harming to men or masculine energy in general. But I understand where that comes from. I understand like where feminist thinking has come from. A lot of these things are responses, though. They're just kind of knee-jerk responses rather than really thought out and aligned, deep wisdom. So to answer your question, I think that unlocking patriarchy and also seeing different feminist concepts and doing the inner work around these things, that's just a starting point. And then also looking at, I would say a lot of men, we struggle with porn and we struggle with not understanding the relationship of having the proper masculine borders with our minds and our hearts.
Yeah.
You don't just give your mind over or your heart over to a government or to media or to anybody, even to your parents. No one. You do the deep inner work. Your God being, your masculine energy needs to cipher through those things. And this is what the masculine energy does. It's like our small intestines, right? The small intestines absorbs nutrients and it expels the rest of the shit literally down to the large intestines.
Right.
This is what the masculine energy does for the feminine. So we need to look at what's real and what's not real in the world. And a lot of men, we have not done that inner work.
Yeah. I think that's not just men. I'd say that's probably men and women, you know.
Yes.
For sure.
This is the work of the masculine energy.
Yeah, the work of the masculine energy, absolutely. And many women, I feel like trying to step into those masculine roles and gain power that way instead of having the feminine energy come and be equal, right? Like we're becoming unbalanced, trying to meet a certain standard instead of having them truly be equally valued.
Well, this is where a tribe and a deep dive into society is really needed, because everything that you said, I wholeheartedly agree with. And it's fucking hard when the woman has to get up and a lot of times she's the dual or the single breadwinner. She gets in a car, which is a mental thing of driving a car, and then gets on computers. And there's so much thing put on her in her yang or masculine energy all day long. But then she's supposed to be feminine. It's like, it's a tall ask. It's almost impossible to do that. A lot of the feminine energy, whether we're talking men or women, it needs to be cocooned, and be able to step away from these things in order to heal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is an interesting thing of like, so oftentimes, especially in heterosexual relationships, like men stepping into their healthy masculine and asking their women to be in their healthy feminine. How do you have that conversation when the woman, like you said, is in the masculine oftentimes all day long, and they come home, and how do you support that space without like being oppressive?
Yeah, so this is some of the work that Kirti and me do with couples together. And then if we're talking about as a single person, or even if your partner is not on board, If you're coupled and you're both on the same page or at least in the same book, you got something to work with there. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
For many of us, it may have to just be self-work by ourselves, starting with us first.
Yeah, definitely. And in homosexual relationships, like how do you feel like they can work to balance and have that flow as there's trying to have a balance within both of them of the masculine and feminine energy and having conversation?
Same thing. If you're coupled and the partner is on board, that's a beautiful thing. I can't really even put in words how powerful that is, especially on this planet at this day and time, that you have two human beings that are willing to do some deep inner work. That's some deep shit on this planet right now. That's very dense. And
I've never personally experienced it. I look forward to maybe someday getting to have that kind of relationship.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? So even if we're talking in a homosexual relationship, if you have that partner, blessings. If not, again, it just starts with you.
Yeah.
And again, that vibe, the voice, introspection, breath, and embodiment, that's a good starting point.
I think that's probably true for just about anything in life, right? Any relationship, be it romantic, platonic, business-wise, family, that if you're having conflict or you're struggling with anything, it really just always starts with you and empowering your own mind and not being out of effect of the environment around you, but rather being empowered and being in control of your own personal emotions and being accountable in a healthy way without shaming yourself and creating guilt, but rather stepping forward into your power and letting go of those limiting beliefs and really owning like, okay, where am I and what does even 1% better look like to go on that journey?
Right.
Shophar, this has been amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today? This is like power packed. I feel like we're just like hitting all the stuff. We're going to do a dense one today. We're just going to go. Yeah. We're going to go for it.
Hey, you know what is needed? I'm so thankful for your platform. What's the name of it again? I know it has resource in there.
Yes, Global Resources for Men is what we have here today. So we have it for men and anyone who identifies as male in the group. And yeah, just going forward and trying to support who we can.
Well, what I love about it is that the word resource is like literally to resource, to go back into source, and sometimes we talk about limited resources in this world and everything like that, the scarcity model and everything. That is contrary to the feminine, which is abundant. That has abundance of things. So to be able to tap as men, to be able to tap into your feminine energy and be able to carry that frequency of abundance, that is orgasmicness. So I just wanted to say that. So I love the name of your show, and I'm so thankful to be on it because, as we know on this planet right now, it's much needed.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Shophar. It means a lot. That's awesome. And then you have something coming up in September with one of our previous speakers from the Global Men's Summit on relationships that was done last January, Solomon Blair. So tell us a little bit more about that, how we can support you and Solomon.
Yeah, so we have that coming up in September. I wish I knew the exact date. My bad on that. It's mid-September.
We'll post it later.
Yeah. We'll put that later, but mid-September, and it's called Roar of Creation.
Ooh, I like it.
Brother by the name of Nile Abbasi. He's the master of ceremony to put us all together. Solomon and another brother named Harlan, another brother named Dijon Bowden. So we're the kind of we're forming Voltron. We're forming Wu-Tang. We're coming together as a group so that we can do some really powerful things. It's going to be in San Diego County. Mount Palomar is a beautiful location. It was started by a guy who escaped. It's an amazing story. I never even heard of this guy. They have a museum at the top of the mountain. It was a guy who escaped from slavery, a brother who escaped from slavery, and he made it all the way here to fucking San Diego County on the top of this mountain, and he created this sanctuary. That's awesome. And that is the power of this land, of this energy where we're having this workshop.
That's phenomenal. I just love that so much. So where can people find you?
So right now you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Faux Show Health. Emphasis in the word health. I capitalize HEAL. In order to have health, we have to heal in many instances. So the word heal is in health. And you can also reach out to me, I guess, email info@FOSHO, so FOSHO, energywork.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of that, Shophar. I really appreciate you coming on today. We'll get that information out there for the guys. If anybody wants to email you with questions or learn more about your fantastic retreat that you're going to, workshop that you're going to be hosting in mid-September in San Diego County in California. And gentlemen, until next time, we will see you later. Bye.
Sure.